I know, and I feel I'm pretty sure I've been the reason why we've rescheduled the last 2 times. So
It's
I'll
okay.
I'll,
It's happening
I'll own it.
now.
Yeah, Sabrina, how are you?
I'm doing great.
I should have asked. Do you
Really.
prefer Sabrina or Dr. Sabrina or
I go
Dr.
by Dr.
Sally?
Sabrina professionally, but
All right, Dr. Sabrina.
yeah.
I'm gonna mess it up, but I will do my best to make sure I say that. Great,
Think I'm all set.
cool.
Sorry, I just stopped in. How are you? I'm Tyler. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Tyler. Nice to meet you.
How's it
I've
going?
been listening to you guys, so I kind of like I know you. So
Yeah.
All right, cool.
You have a good
yeah.
Thanksgiving?
Oh yeah, we had family in. We hosted it at
Oh,
our house, and we finished our leftovers. So that's
wow.
now we can eat other food again.
This might be an unpopular opinion. I don't like Thanksgiving food,
Really?
like at all.
It's
Like
heavy.
everyone's like, "Oh, I can't wait for the turkey," and then the leftover turkey sandwiches. That's gonna be. I'm like, I don't even want the initial turkey. Like, get me a Christmas roast or
I,
you know.
I don't
I don't
know.
know.
I don't get the whole like Friendsgiving where they're doing it twice. Where like I enjoy it, but I don't want to
Mm.
eat it 2 weeks in a row.
Well, Tyler, I think you and I are people that have very small groups of friends. Where
Probably.
most of those friendsgivings are like people like, dude, me and my 30 closest friends got together and had friendsgiving. I'm like, dude, I don't have
I
30
I also
unclose friends.
don't. Yeah, like I don't feel like Friendsgiving makes any sense. It like the whole play on words. Just it doesn't make any sense.
Hmm.
Thanksgiving and Friendsgiving. It's not family giving.
Very true. Should be like, thanks, friends. Or something.
It frustrates me.
So
Can
did
you
you guys
tell if
take
my
some time off for Thanksgiving?
Yes, we take. I mean, we take Thursday, Friday, and then have the long weekend. So
Good. Good.
yeah,
Nick? Can you tell if my audio's good because I feel
your
like
audio. No, you're good.
I can't hear it
No,
in my headphones.
is your big dial?
Oh, there, I got it now.
Ooh, now you're a little loud on my
All
end
right,
here.
sorry.
That's okay.
Better? Too loud still?
You're loud ish.
All right, still too loud?
No, you're probably on the quieter side.
Okay.
Whoa, don't
Whoa,
do that.
sorry. It doesn't sound like it normally does.
You can turn it up a little bit if needed, but your big dial should be up high enough so you can hear.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
I just want to make sure it's good on your end.
Yeah, everyone's good. Everyone's golden. Dr. Sabrina, so Adam McKee connected us, and I think
Contemporary Woods.
Yeah, I think you guys work together. Is that right?
Yes, he's been in our Better Business, Better Life coaching program at Tap the Potential for a year and a half now, and making he's just amazing. When you guys interviewed him on the podcast and you did the introduction for him and you talked about like just who he is and how he shows up as a person who's a giver, I just felt so proud of him. And I told him, I said, I'm not your mom, but I felt that mom pride. I'm like, look at Adam go, because he is really changing things in his business.
So you just opened up after Tyler talked about Thanksgiving with, did you guys take time off? And then Tap the Potential, Better Life, Better Business, Better Life. I feel like all of this is obviously intertwined. What is it that you focus on?
Well, we help business owners take their lives back from their businesses. And I am passionate about helping business owners create a highly profitable, great place to work that gives them more time for what matters most and more money in their bank account than ever. And there's so many small business owners out there, especially in the trades, who just throw their whole heart into everything they do. And they get a successful business because of it. And that business just takes over their lives. And it doesn't have to be that way. And what I think so many of us don't recognize is that the pains that you're experiencing in your business are normal. It's a part of growth. but there's a way out. There's a path out of the chaos, and there's the opportunity to really get the business where it can run without the owner's daily involvement. And so I've written a series on how to hire the best. One is the Contractor's Edition, the Contractor's Ultimate Guide to Attracting Top Performing Team Members. I have also written the book, The 4-Week Vacation, which is the entrepreneur's ultimate guide to taking their life back from their business.
So you say it's all businesses, but is there a heavy focus on construction? And if so,
we have a lot of clients who are in the construction industry, a lot of remodelers in the different trades. I don't know a particular reason why, other than when I wrote the first How to Hire the Best book, I wrote it I was in Wyoming, and I was coaching, and all the clients I had were in a rural area, and they would always say, well, we can't get good help, and it's because we're a small business in a small town in a rural area. So I dug in and I solved that problem for them, and I wrote the rural edition of How to Hire the Best. And then the phone started ringing. I started getting phone calls from people all over the country, and they would say, I'm not in a rural area, I'm in New York or New Jersey, and I have these challenges too. Can you help me? And I'm strategic. I started looking at what industry they're in, and so many of them were in the construction industry. So I decided to write my next book focused on the construction industry. And I mean, you guys know some of the factors going on in the industry that contribute to the hiring challenges, like the aging out. So many people are wanting to be out of the industry, and there's not enough new people coming in. Our school systems want to send people to college, and they don't encourage trades. And so that's a big part of that. And that's also a big part of the solution for hiring challenges in the industry. But in order to be able to take your life back from your business, you have to be able to attract good people that you trust. And so that's what I've really dug into, is how do you do that? And how do you bring them into the business and train them and set them up for success while you're doing all the things and you're still very much in the business yourself? So that's kind of our sweet spot at Tap the Potential. And one of the things that I find in working with so many people who are in the industry is your heart is in the right place. You really want to create a great place to work. You want to be a good leader. And it's just a lack of, I don't know how. No one's taught me these skills. And so learning the skills is a big piece of it.
So you started Tap the Potential, it was 17 years ago?
17 years ago. Yeah.
And what did that look like at that point, and kind of what does it look like now as far as the business?
What it looked like then was I quit my job. I was working as a psychologist in a community mental health center, and I was burned out because there was a lot more need for than people to go around to serve the people who needed help. And I drove away from my job in my 4Runner with my office packed up in the back. And I thought, oh, thank goodness, I'm out on my own. I can do my own thing. My time is my own, right? And when I started the business, I did it when my daughter was a newborn baby. And it was really important to me. One of the reasons I left mental health is because I would come home from work and I felt like I have nothing left to give. Like I was a dried up prune. I had given my best to the clients and I had nothing left of me, and I couldn't be a good mom that way. So I thought, if I start my own business, I can be a good mom. And I had the intention that I would work no more than 25 hours a week in my business. And that was the hardest decision I made because I needed to bring in money. And so I had to do whatever I could to do that. But it was also the best decision I made because I've been able to grow Tap the Potential over these 17 years, working about 25 to 30 hours a week. And I firmly believe that limits force creativity and innovation. I had to be really scrappy to do that. And it's also kept me from doing things that don't contribute value to the business, because it's so easy to just say, yes, I'll do this, and yes, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And then the business just takes over our lives.
So you talk about like hiring the right people, and you wrote a book on it. And when you said that's kind of like your bread and butter in the big picture, if you were to summarize the way you get to that 4-week vacation, the way you get to freedom within your business, is it really, is it everything that you kind of teach lead back to having the right people in place?
Yes, you have to have, and the right people isn't just team members. It's the right clients and customers. It's the right
Fair. Yeah.
vendors. And so the core of what I've discovered over 17 years now of what really changes things, the pivotal moment for business owners is when you identify your immutable laws and
Mm-hmm.
you say, this is how business will be done. This is how we
Mm-hmm.
do it here. And you are intentional to only take on clients who have core values that align with your immutable laws. You only work with vendors who have core values that align with your immutable laws. And your immutable laws become your number one filter when you're hiring. And so the immutable laws come from your own core values, and they're your way of doing life. And one of the easiest ways to identify your immutable laws is to look at, well, what's pissed you off lately? Because when you're angry, that's a sign somebody's violated your immutable law. So what was the value that was violated in that? The other way
Mm-hmm.
to identify these is to look at what's made you proud, because
Mm-hmm.
there is a value there that's being honored. And so when you articulate these and you use that as your kind of red rope around your business, you immediately elevate the quality of the people that you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of what consumes our time as small business owners is people problems, complaints, people that we don't get along with, or team members who do something that make us upset, or they screw something up and then we have to go back and fix it. That is what just eats away at our time as business owners.
So here's my follow-up to that, because this is something I've been thinking about a lot, and I have similar conversations about being a business owner, taking more time, traveling more, creating freedom in my life. That's my ultimate goal, is to wake up and decide if I want to be in the office, if I want to go on a trip. Like, we all look at that, but there's a huge majority of our audience that listens to this that doesn't own their own business. And I've had these conversations, and I think about, like, yeah, I want to hire the right people so I can take more time off from work and be away from the business. And when I say that out loud, I'm like, but I have two thoughts. Am I just hiring someone to then work their ass off for me to be able to have freedom, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or, or is that the benefit of being the business owner? Is like, no, I own the business. I'm taking all the risk. I deserve that. But when when I say that, like, when I think through that, I'm like, well, no, that person is maybe when you look at it on a scale, it's not equal, but they're deserving of a great life too. Maybe they
Yeah.
don't
So,
get to work 10 hours a week for the financial benefit of how successful the company is, because their effort is very confined. But, I think that, at least especially the audience listening, a lot of this conversation can be easily centered around business owners and getting to this 4-week vacation. But the reality is, there's guys out there that bust their ass for a boss, 40 hours a week, 50, 60, hours a week. And they're doing it for, and very much have this, like, tunnel vision of their boss who is just taking advantage of their hard work.
yeah. So why does it have to be an either or? Why does the boss have to be the only one who benefits? One of our immutable laws at Tap the Potential is work supports life, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And we advocate for creating a great place to work, for team members being able to take time off and spend time with their family, their loved ones. We have some clients who are creating 4-week vacation advancement opportunities for their key team members.
Mm-hmm.
So it really becomes a value that gets woven into the business. And the other side of it is you really are unintentionally stifling your growth when you continue to work in the business as the business owner. You are stifling opportunities for people to become leaders in your company because you're holding on to too much. Everything that you let go of creates an advancement opportunity for someone else on your team.
Right.
And when you're in the day-to-day yourself as the business owner, no one is in the visionary seat in the company, which is the highest value activity in the company. to drive the vision, drive the strategy. Those are the $10,000 an hour activities for a business owner that don't get done.
What if that's okay? What if that person
How
doesn't?
so?
What if that person doesn't want leadership, a leadership team? What if that person doesn't want employees? What if that person wants to go to work and do great? I mean, maybe I'm speaking for you,
Yeah.
Tyler, but I feel like there's a lot of people, Spencer, our last guest, like he's not someone that wants, he's, I can't speak for him, but he's not someone that, in my opinion, is going to sit down and think about, hiring people, putting them in leadership roles. He's going to build a life that he wants.
Yeah.
And, and yeah, he is very much working in the business.
We should be at choice in designing our businesses in a way that supports our life vision. And that's what we do at Tap the Potential. We talk to business owners day in and day out. You don't create a business plan without thinking about your life vision. You want to be clear on what you want, and you design your business to support that life vision of how you want to be in this world. And, one of the things that my journey was that I got myself into the position where I could take a 4-week vacation a few years ago. And I thought, great, I don't need to be in the delivery of services now. We have strategists who can coach. I don't have to be on the coaching calls all the time. And then I missed it. I missed being in there talking to our clients. And so now I've gone in and I've set things up where I'm at choice. I left a group early today to be able to come and do this podcast with you. And Melissa Swire, our lead strategist, ran the rest of the group. It gives me that choice. And I think for individuals who are like, I just love what I do. I don't want to grow a team. I just want to do my thing. That's wonderful. And I would also encourage you to think about, what is your risk management plan? If something happens to you, how do you continue to pay yourself? And if you have a family, how do you continue to make sure revenue and income comes in for the family? That's the biggest, that's the scariest thing for a solopreneur who's just doing it on their own. And for me, my awareness was around my parents' health and that I needed to be able to have flexibility to be there for them. I didn't want to hire people. I was helping business owners hire A players on their teams. And I was also hearing horror stories of, all the hiring PTSD that our clients had. And so I was hearing all that and I was thinking, I'm a solo coach. I'm going on my own. Things are going great. I don't want to hire anybody. I don't want to grow beyond a certain level. And then I started thinking, well, what happens if something happens to me? What if my parents need me? And at some point, people just want to take vacation. And it really stinks to take vacation and to know you're not going to get paid that week, but the bills are still coming in. So you're having to do double duty. Like, that's exhausting.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing to really kind of point out here is that when you are an owner operator, taking a 4-week vacation isn't a big deal, right? If you can financially support yourself before and after that, the big thing is having a business that can sustain while you walk away. Like if I take a 4-week vacation, I'm not getting paid. Where if you have a larger business that's going to be working while you are away, it's just something to kind of distinguish there between the two. Even in Spencer's case, it's the same thing. Spencer goes away and he does have his YouTube, but it's speaking of, on the job work. If he's not working, he's not getting paid. So that's definitely something to distinguish there between the different operations and setups.
Absolutely. And, there's the opportunity to really focus in the business on what you enjoy the most. If we're honest, as business owners, there's a lot of things we do in the business that we don't enjoy doing. For me, it was the bookkeeping. Like, I always put that off till Friday afternoon. And inevitably, I was working late into the evening on Fridays doing bookkeeping. And I had this mindset, well, I don't want to pay somebody to do this. I can just do it myself. It's easy enough to get it done. And once I realized how many mistakes I was making as the bookkeeper in the business, it was just clear to me I was much better off bringing in somebody who could take this off me. And once it was off of me and I could focus on what I love, the coaching and the teaching and the training, it was like this weight was lifted off. And so there's every one of us has things in the business that this is the best part. This is the part I love. And what if you had more time to do that you love? I think, Nick, I've heard you talk about, like, if I could just get out there and frame, right? That would be so much fun. And what if you set your business up where you have a team that can do this for you? It's like you get to do the fun stuff.
Yeah, it's. I think it's so funny because oftentimes, as an entrepreneur, you're starting your business for what you love, and as you get busier, you have to do less of what you love, and it gets to the point where it's like, now I'm doing everything and anything except for why I got into this business in the first place. And most people are just trying to get back to, hey, I can put the tool belt on, hey, I can build, I can kind of set my own schedule. And instead you're putting all the pieces together and you're not doing that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
It's great. That's I feel like that's really tough. One thing that I really like through what you're doing and Tap the Potential is you're looking to kind of, I think on your website it says disrupt the hustle culture in entrepreneurship. And I think that, I can speak for Nick and myself when we started our business in our early 20s without, maybe not being married, not having kids, and you can work 20 hours a day and you don't get tired. And I feel as though there was this cultural movement where the hustle and the grind proved your self-worth. And
yes,
it probably took me 10 years to realize that I have more to offer than how many hours I can work in a day, and that doesn't actually prove my self-worth. And I think that, the misconception that a lot of people have is, hey, you're self-employed, you can just work more hours. Like, that's how you make more money. Is everyone else has a 40-hour work week, you can work 80 hours. And I think that that's the wrong mindset to have. But what made you kind of have that emphasis on, hey, it's not about how much you work and how hard you're hustling, more so kind of working smarter?
Well, obviously it started for me because I wanted to work 25 hours a week. And I was like, I've got to figure out how to grow this business. But I also kept that a secret because I had a lot of male clients in the construction industry. And if there's one industry where the hustle culture is rampant, it's the construction industry.
Yeah.
Because you have these fathers who are like, show up, get to work, work hard. And that's just a mentality. It's part of how people are raised. And the other side of it is I was working with these business owners who had employees and had team members. And I felt like if I told them I'm working 25 hours a week, they wouldn't think I had a real business. And it wasn't until someone said, not only do you have a real business, you have a really cool business, and you need to be talking about this more, that it's possible to grow a business on 25 hours a week. But the epiphany for me is when I was talking to one of my clients. He's a longstanding client, worked with him, I think 15 years now. And he said he hadn't taken more than 4 days off in 40 years. 4 days in 40 years. And I was like, that's it. This has to change. Like, this cannot continue to go on. And we have some data now. We have our Better Business, Better Life assessment at Tap the Potential. It's on our website at tapthepotential.com. It's a free assessment. We've given it to going on 400 entrepreneurs. We've analyzed the data now on 225 of them. And one of the really interesting findings, first off, number one, 9 out of 10 business owners are burning out. So that means only 1 out of 10 is not burning out. And so what I've started looking at is what's going on with the 1 out of 10 who aren't burning out. What are they doing differently? And what do their businesses and their lives look like? And what we're seeing is that those who are able to take the most time off, fully unplugged from their business, have the fewest number of symptoms of burnout. So there's, obviously take more time off, you're going to be less burnt out. That's kind of a no-brainer. But the ones who are able to take the most time off away from their business fully unplugged are achieving 3 times the revenue of the ones who are burning out. And so this directly disrupts hustle culture because we think we're going to make more money if we work harder. That's what we've all been raised to think.
Yeah.
It's not true. When you work less, you work more effectively, you have the time to think and be strategic, and you can work less and have more revenue and more profit.
So is this the concept that you're hoping to kind of transfer and rub off on your employees as well, right? Because you're a business owner and you need a certain
Yes.
amount of output from your employees, and then you have a business owner saying, "Hey, like let's work less." Like it
Yes.
almost,
Yes.
it seems counterintuitive.
So I'm a psychologist by training, and I have always been fascinated about human potential and how we tap human potential, hence the name of my business, Tap the Potential. And what we know is that we become less effective the more hours we work a week. So 25 to 30 something hours is the optimal amount of hours to work. As we get closer and closer to 40, which most people would say that's a normal work week for most business owners, that's like working part-time is when you're working 40 hours a week. But as you approach 40 and you go to 60 or more, you become less and less effective. There's more mistakes, there's more oversight, there's more rework. And the same thing happens on our teams, whether it's physical labor or mental labor. The longer the hours we put in, the less effective and productive we're going to be. So we really strive to keep our team members working part-time at Tap Potential. We have some that are going full-time because they have a financial need. And we believe work supports life. So we're trying to accommodate that. But our team at Tap Potential is part-time because I want my team members to have a life away from business, because they come to work energized. They're awake when they show up for work. They're not, dragging in and tired. They've had the time to recover.
So, I mean, I understand how that works. Like that makes sense to me. If I look at my kids and my kids get a better night's sleep and they're just more well-rounded individuals. They're not they're easier to tolerate when they get more sleep, right? And it's the same basic principles for your employees, but I feel as though our industry, and this is something we spoke about last week, where it's like I see subs working Saturdays and Sundays, and a lot of times the business owner isn't doing that. And we're in an industry where people want things done. We're always behind schedule. And I feel like it's got to be so hard to implement that, where it's like, hey, we need stuff done, but I don't want you coming to the job. I don't want you to overwork yourself, to put extra burden on yourself. And I feel like it's got to be hard to implement that in real life.
It's challenging.
Well, what I was going to add to that is, like, I had this conversation. A friend of mine is very, invested in construction tech, and how all these companies are coming out with all this technology to improve construction. And what they seem to be missing is, like, they're trying to they're basically trying to restart the whole process and change the way we do things, when the reality is what we need to fix is the efficiency in which we work. So what you said a couple minutes ago really, kind of struck a chord with me, where it's like you decided that you wanted to work 24 hours a week. And what that made you do is stop doing things that weren't actually good for the business or moving you forward in the business. And and when you said that, I look in front of me at my whiteboard, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of things up there that don't really attribute to, like, the growth of my business, but there are things that could, or there's like ideas that I want to eventually, tackle, right? Where if someone said, Nick, you only have 25 hours to get this, your work done, I'd be like, all right, I'm erasing all of that. And I've told this story a handful of times, but the whole hurricane down in Florida, Sanibel Island was completely disconnected. The bridge was collapsed, and it was like, typically it would be months to fix the bridge because it, took years to build it. Right. And the Army Corps of Engineers came in and they rebuilt the bridge in 7 days. And in reading the article, it was like, well, why, how could they have done that in 7 days if it should have taken months? And it's because they wanted to.
Yeah.
And that was, and they wanted to, because there was, obviously they needed to connect the island, and it was important to get it done. And that was the constraint. And I challenge my team with this all the time, where, oftentimes it's like, yeah, but they had unlimited money. It's like, okay, I mean, like, that's one of the resources, but, and I don't want to go down the road of like, well, what is money? right? Because like, we can go down that whole path. But the reality of it is they were able to accomplish that because they wanted to, because there was
Yeah.
some sort of constraint that was put on them, just like you're putting a 25-hour a week constraint on yourself to get something done. And it's like the age old, like, if you give, I forget, I thought I was going to come to me as I said it out loud, but it's like when I used to write a paper for school, it's like, oh, you
Yeah.
got 3 weeks to do it. It's like, great. I'm going to wait until the night before.
Yeah. And you got it done.
And I got it done. Right. And it's the same thing where it's like, the 40 hours a week is so funny to me, because that just came out of the production line. That was something like Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week. That is what we have decided is the work schedule for the entire, let's call it the U.S., the world, right? And I was thinking about this the other day when I was driving around the job sites with my kids, and I'm like, it's so quiet. There's no one working, and it's funny to think that the entire population has just decided, all right, we're not working on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Like that's just something we're not doing anymore. Years and years ago, but.
Well, and so what that just makes us aware of is we have assumptions that are unexamined assumptions. We just decide this is how we do life. And that's what I'm all about, is disrupting those assumptions. Some of them are good and worth keeping. I'm an advocate for not working on Sunday. We need downtime. But the assumption that we're supposed to work 40 hours and that's normal, like we just have decided that collectively as a society, and it's not healthy. It's not necessary. And we absolutely can be very effective when we have limits. And so one of the things when we've had our clients make the 4-week vacation pledge is we give them accountability. And one of their first assignments is to tell their spouse, their kids, hey, we're going to be off during this time. We're going to take a vacation, and it's going to happen. And then you go and tell your team members. And so all of a sudden you have people around you holding you accountable. And, you don't want to be the one to say to your kids 2 weeks before it's time for you to take your 4-week vacation, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I didn't do the work that I needed to do on my business to make this happen. And that natural accountability that you build in is really key to taking your life back from your business. And, I think about for myself, when my oldest started school, she went off to kindergarten and she was gone for 6 or 7 hours. All of a sudden I was working 35 hours a week and I wasn't any more effective. The business wasn't more profitable. And so I scaled back. I was like, okay, I'm going to scale it back. And so now I have natural accountability. When my kids are out of school, I'm done.
It's so funny. I was with another builder in Boston here, Kevin Craddock, literally just before this podcast, and we were talking about all these events going on, like these, the industry has all these awards events, and he was asking if I was going to this one or that one, and I said to him, I'm like, Kevin, you are at every event. And I said something the other day to my wife, and she was like, well, his kids are older. And I was like,
there's
oh, yeah,
a season.
my kids are really young, so for me to be out every night, my wife would leave me. But we started talking back and forth, and I'm like, it is funny though, because and he said it, he was like, my kids are gone, so I don't know what to do with myself, so I'm either going to work more or I'm going to go to an event. And I laughed and I said, yeah, I mean, my wife has left, taking the kids to Florida to see her dad, and when she goes, I'm like, cool, I'm going to work more. I don't say, all right, cool, I'm gonna have hey, I should go to a concert, or I should go get dinner with a friend, or just hang out by myself. No, it's like, oh, cool, I get to work more. And that's like the initial gut reaction to it.
And that happens because we've become so focused on our work. And what's interesting to me is when work consumes our lives, we forget we have other things we enjoy. So we don't nurture our friendships. So we don't, when you have that opportunity to go out to dinner with a friend, you don't even like, which friend would I want to go? I haven't talked to these guys in 6 years. Why are they going to want to go to dinner with me?
Right. They stopped asking me 5 years ago.
Yes. Yeah. And And so when we work with our clients on taking a 4-week vacation, oftentimes we get a lot of resistance. People are like, I don't need a 4-week vacation. 2 is good, whatever. And I'm like, no, you have to do 4 weeks and the reason for the 4 weeks is that your business has to go through a complete business cycle without you in it. So selling your services, collecting payment, delivery, fulfillment, all of that. But when you work towards a 4-week vacation, you are doing it in small steps. So there's 4-week vacation tests. So you really look at what's the longest you've been able to be away from your business fully unplugged. I heard you guys say you took Thursday and Friday off. So that's 4 days because that also includes the weekend. So, your test might be 6 days fully unplugged. So it's just a little bit more than what you've done previously. And then you think about what's going to fall through the cracks while I'm gone and what am I catching up on when I get back? Those are the things that you have to either hire for or put systems in place or both. Or just delegate to the current team members. And as you start to do that, the beauty of that small bit of time that you start to take back from your life is you get bored. You have to figure out what to do with yourself for 2 extra days off. And, you can travel, but a lot of people get tired of traveling. And so then you have to think about, well, who am I when I'm not working in the business? What do I like to do? What hobbies did I used to have before I had this business? I mean, you guys had lives. You had things that you did before you ran a business. What were the fun things you did back then? In that process of just reconnecting with who you are away from the business. And as soon as you start to really develop hobbies and things that you enjoy away from the business and you start tending to your personal relationships, they become more fulfilling and they become more compelling to you. They compete with the business's attention.
See that
your attention.
I feel like that's so hard for people because most small businesses got into their small business because that's their passion, right? You think somebody who started a company who wants to make pastries, somebody who wants to make art, and then you're telling it turns into something else. I really enjoyed carpentry, and for a long time that kind of filled that void and that need for me. And then at some point it changed and I wasn't enjoying it as much. And it was take on more. You have to work more. You have to make more money. And it's hard to get back to doing it for the sake of doing it. It almost kind of puts a cloud over it, where you don't enjoy it the same way that you did. And I think at that point, it is important to bring something else into your life to kind of reignite that spark and kind of shift your focus elsewhere. But there is a long time where you're starting your business and it's so fun and it's so exciting and work doesn't feel like work. And you could put in 80 hours a week and you feel like you could work more. And I think that just kind of gets ingrained in you. And then you're 10 years into it before you realize that you're tired of putting in 80-hour work weeks.
Right. It's that conundrum of what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
And so when we start our business, the grind it out mentality is absolutely necessary because we got to hustle. We got to bring in some money. But once you have clients and you have business coming in, that mindset no longer serves us. And we have to learn to grow as leaders. And that's something that no one told me when I started my business, that I was going to be on this professional development, leadership development plan. But every phase that my business goes through stretches my leadership and my personal development. And if we don't grow as leaders, we get stuck in our businesses. I mean, that's the key. It's our mindset, and we have to make that shift. And I would venture that if you were at a point where you'd had some time away from your business and things relying on you and you were at choice and you got to figure out, well, what kind of projects do I want to do? What would light me up? You would probably be really clear on these are the things I want to do. These are the fun things, because you don't have to do the things that are that bring in income, because you feel that freedom of choice.
Yeah, it is. It's so interesting the way that businesses kind of evolve as from when you start it until, you're 5 years in, 10 years in, and 15 years in. I feel as though everything's changing and evolving so much that it takes a certain amount of time before you realize that what you're doing probably isn't sustainable. There's just always something
Mhm.
to kind of keep you in and loop you in. And if nobody ever tells you, that you don't have self-worth because you're working 65, 70 hours a week, you see somebody and they're working 25 hours a week in our industry, Nick, and it's like, what, you don't have any work? Like, you need work? I have jobs where, there's something
Yeah.
wrong. Or
It's like, how many hours you week? 40 hours. Oh, really? What are you,
yeah,
part-time?
I remember my
Like,
first part-time job.
yeah, right.
Um,
But
but it's even like, you start getting better jobs, and then it's like, well, now my interest had shifted to the jobs that excite me more. And
Mhm.
that'll keep you 2-3 years where it's like you're still working the same amount of hours because it's still so much fun. And then your business changes and you're more focused on growing a different segment of it. Meanwhile, you're never paying any attention to, like, maybe I can find a way to work a little less and enjoy certain aspects of life.
but
Yeah.
is there an argument that what we're talking about isn't for everyone? Meaning, maybe
Mhm.
maybe some people have no issue working 50, 60, 80 hours a week. Like zero. Like they can do it their whole life. It's what they're cut from that cloth. They don't get burnt out. And it's what they like to do. When they wake up and it's like, hey, you can do anything you want. It's like, cool, I'm gonna go make some money.
Yeah.
And it so I just want I guess I just want to say that out loud because I think about the same conversations I have with people when it's, we're talking about like the way we market, or like I don't need to be on social media. It's like, okay, like we
Mhm.
can sit here and tell you you need to be on social media to market your business, but that might not be the case. Maybe you sustain the clientele that you have, and you're not looking to continue to grow. You are very
Yeah.
comfortable with where you're at. You don't need to add something to your plate. And I think just saying it out loud about, we're talking about working less, working less, working less. Like it's easy to kind of drown in that mentality of like, I need to work less. But if you need to work less, you should work less. Is that fair to say?
I think it's also important to pay attention to what is the impact of the level of your work, and whatever level you're working currently. How is that
Mhm.
impacting other important relationships in your life and your health?
Mhm.
And so the divorce rate for entrepreneurs is 5 to 10 times higher than the general population.
Oh,
So for
wonderful.
us to sit here, and I
Yeah.
know, right? For us to sit here and say, if you want to work 80 hours a week, go for it. That's fine if you're single and you plan to be single the rest of your life and you don't have kids and you don't
I
have anybody else
considered
who
it.
wants your time. So it really is like, what are your other important roles in your life?
You know
And
what they
are they
say,
getting time from
hindsight's
you?
20/20, right? It's like, it would have
I
been a
think you
decent
got a
option.
signal.
Yeah, would have been a decent option. Unfortunately, I'm about 10 years too late.
2 kids.
11, 2 kids.
Mhm.
Oh,
So, when we're showing up 60 hours a week at work, how much
mm.
time are we giving our kids and our spouses?
No, I mean, it's completely fair, and I think I think this also comes down to like, well, what do you classify as working too much? Is that, the physical strain you put on your body? Is that the amount of hours you put in the day? Is that the amount of hours that you work outside of the home versus inside the home? Entrepreneurs, they're like, I'm always working. When I'm home, I'm on my phone, I'm answering emails, I'm working, work-life balance. No, it's a blend. Like I can be with my kids, be in a good mood, be a good dad, be a good husband, and be firing off email. Like, yeah, some people can, but some people can't. And I went through that
I
for a long time where I couldn't be at home with my kids, be a good dad, be a good husband, and answer emails, because if I was doing that and I read an email the wrong way and it pissed me off, and my kid was like, Dad, 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 and I would turn around and I'd snap, and it's like I don't want to ever do that again.
Yeah.
But some people don't have that. Some people can totally blend and take things completely lightheartedly and be the best version of themselves for their family at the same time.
I've been asked this question a lot, and I've given it a lot of consideration, and what I've decided for myself is it really comes down to, at what point do I start to feel like I'm going through the motions at work?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what lights me up and gives me energy, and when is my energy getting drained? And so, like, over the Thanksgiving break, I took most of the week off. On Sunday, and Saturday and Sunday, I was reading a business book, and my husband looked at me. He's like, "You're working." I'm like, "No, I'm not. This is fun. I'm learning something
Yeah.
new here." And so in my mind, it's just like, that's fun. It's giving me energy. But on the outside, somebody else would say, "You're working." So it's when we're enjoying it, it's not work.
Yeah.
The point where we're going through the motions
Right.
and we're just showing up because it's needed from us. That's where it's a sign, like it's time to slow it down.
Yeah, and I think that everything has to be done in moderation, and it's no different than doing something that you enjoy, and exercising, for example.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to say that's a great habit to have, but it can get to a point where it's very unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually counterproductive. And I mean, I know exactly where Nick's going with this, and what you get out of working hard and spending the time on your business and growing your business, and the excitement that goes along with that. And I think a lot of times, um, as entrepreneurs, we kind of have the mindset and the crutch that it's like, hey, I'm doing this for everyone else. I'm doing this to support my family.
Yeah.
They have what they need. We go on vacations and everything else, when I don't think that that's necessarily true all the time. I think that a lot
Mhm.
of people who work the way they do are doing that because they want to do that. And it's very easy to say, like, I'm doing this, I'm supporting the family, so there's nothing wrong with it. Or in actuality, like, I had the conversation with my kids. Would you rather have more stuff or see me more? And you ask your
Mm-hmm.
kids that, and they want to see you more, right? And I think that that's just an important thing to note, that we often kind of have that crutch where we say, "Hey, I'm doing this for everyone else," when deep down it's something that you're looking to kind of fulfill within yourself.
I've got a few stories that I want to share with you guys because this really touches what you're getting at. My daughter is on swim team. She's 8, and it's learning, and it's all new for her, and she's losing her motivation to stick with it. So I decided when she goes to her team practices, I'm going to swim laps, and I'm not great. I used to swim a lot when I was a kid, but I'm no swimmer. So I'm really struggling in the pool to swim these laps. And at the end of her swim team session, I was sitting in the hot tub. She came over, and some of her other friends from swim team came. This little boy sat down, and he said, "Is this your first time swimming?" And I said, "Well, it's been a while, but yeah." And he said, "You're doing great. You need to keep this up." And his next statement was, "I wish my dad would swim with me."
And then you're like, I'm going to every swim practice ever for the
Yes,
rest of my life.
you bet.
Dude, I've been seeing those on like Instagram Reels and stuff, where it's like the power of showing up, and the kid like walks out
Yes.
of like on stage and he's looking for his dad. And I've experienced it, where it's like you show up to something that your kid is at, and they're looking around, and they're like, Marley, my oldest, did a dance recital, and she's on stage and she's performing, but she's feverishly looking around. So I'm
Yeah.
like waving. I'm like, please look, because I know once you see me, you're gonna be totally fine. And she did,
Yeah.
and then it was like, the big smile, and then they're like, got it. Yeah, I mean that's powerful. Like that's powerful. And I guess
It
where you're
is.
going with that is like the dad's working,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
he
He's
can't like,
not present.
yeah,
Yeah. He's not making the time, and the son misses him. And the other thing that's interesting to me is I wonder if his son would ever say to him, "Dad, I wish you'd swim with me." He told that to a stranger.
Yeah.
mm.
And so we as parents don't always know what our kids are longing for because they're not going to say it out loud
or
necessarily.
we take it. I mean, I just ran that thought through my mind, where it's my kid probably would tell me, but he would also tell me right after that he wants a lollipop.
Yeah.
So it's like
It's
him
different
telling,
when somebody else's kid tells you. Like, my kid
yeah,
tells me,
Yeah.
I heard it. You said it 700 times.
yeah,
Like, I
it's like, I
get it.
know you want me to swim. I know you want a lollipop. I know you want mac and cheese. Like, hold on a second.
Yeah.
Where it's like when it's that, very direct, like contained conversation, it's way more, there's way more weight to it.
You also you don't know what will impact your kids, and I mean, I look back to when I was younger, and there's things that stick out in my mind that I still hold on to this day that were so inconsequential, and really you could have just walked by and never taken a second note of, but certain things stick out to kids and they recall them and remember them for their entire lives. And I think that, you know, putting yourself in a position to kind of maximize those opportunities is important. And obviously work is important, and providing for your family is important. But when I look at my career, right, and I started my business when I was around 23, and if I enjoy what I do and I want to work, you know, until I'm 65, 70 years old, that's 50 years, right? I can kind of take 16, 18 of those years when I have my kids and put a little time aside for them. And if really, you know, there's nothing that's going to stop me from being 50 years old and kind of getting a second wind and really putting more effort into my business once my kids are grown and out of the house. So I
Yeah.
don't think that it's something that has to happen when they're 4 or 5 years old. Obviously, you think I'm in my youth, this is my prime, but with the way things are going now, there's plenty of ways to make money. You know, 50 years old, 60 years old, 70 years old, that it's not quite such a priority.
Yeah. And you know, the thing that just that I want to share with you guys is the understanding of the how much your kids need you and how much your wives and even your friends. Men neglect friendships like notoriously. And men experience a lot of loneliness in their lives because of that. And when you go through challenges and you don't have those male friends there to, you know, just say, hey, this is really hard. I don't know what I'm going to do here. You're missing a huge support network in that. And some things that really have stood out to me in my career of coaching business owners is a lot of times it's the wife who tells them to join our program. That's one clue. But the other thing, I've had the experience where a business owner told me that one of his worst experiences, and he's a builder and remodeler, by the way. He said one of his worst experiences was his daughter said to him, Dad, you always say you're working so we can have a better future. So when someday comes, and she said, Dad, when does someday come? When is this going to be here? And that same girl at one of our retreats, after Dad had been in our program for a couple of years, he put her on the phone with me, and I just got to talk with her, and you know, and we were FaceTiming, and she said, "I thank you so much for what you're doing with my dad. Like, he spends time with me now. He gets up with me in the morning. He takes me to school. He goes to my activities. Like, that's a child, 10 years old, thanking me." The other experience that I recently had is I talked about this at a conference, and I was in the lobby, and one of the attendees came up and he said, I want you to meet my wife. And he introduced his wife, and he explained to her, he said, what I just heard Dr. Sabrina talk about is going to change everything about how I work. I'm going to be present and be home more. And she just hugged me. She said, thank you. That's
this is
what this is about.
And this is this is very much on my mind recently. So there's just a lot going on in my mind when you talk about this out loud. But I go back to my original thought there is that, and one of the reasons I struggle with being home more, taking more time, taking my kids to school, is that my team doesn't get to do that. My guys on site, you know, even though I tell them, dude, you don't have to be on site at 7. Like, do your thing. Like, if you got kids in the morning, do your thing. But the reality is there's still pressure for them to be there at 7. Especially the guys that are boots on the ground, tools in their pocket, like getting work done. And when I wake up early, I get 2 hours to myself in the morning. I get to do whatever I want. Most of the time I go to the gym or I go for a run. After that, it's work mode. But recently I've been holding back and going back home, taking the kids to school. It takes a half hour out of my day. It kind of screws up like my start, but you know, I shouldn't say it does. It screws up my work start, but that's fine. Like I can get some emails done, take them to school, and then right back into work mode. It doesn't really impact me. But I oftentimes think, I'm like, how can I get over the fact that there's a part of me that doesn't feel like that's fair, where it's like
Yeah.
I'm expecting my team to be there at 7. There's that notion that, if you own the business, you better be there at 6:50. You got to be there. You got to be the first one in the shop, the last one out.
Yeah.
And, and as I say that out loud, it makes me wonder, is like, well, maybe you just get rid of that entirely. It's like, who cares who's the first one, who's the last one? Like, if people are coming and get their work done, like, that should be enough.
There's the role modeling as the business owner. If you're working these crazy long hours, first one in, last one to leave, you're showing your team they have to do the same. And when we start taking time to be there for kids and leaving work at a decent time, we're role modeling healthy work-life balance for our team members. And, there's the question of, well, how does work happen if we have people coming and going at different times? That's a challenge for the team. Like, let's put our heads together. This is a constraint that we're going to have, where people have more flexibility to be there more in their lives. So how do we stay productive and make sure projects get finished on time and meet our deadlines? How do we do that? And close your mouth, put the imaginary duct tape over your mouth after you ask that question. Let your team kind of grapple with it and see what ideas come up.
So what's the biggest hurdle when you're having a meeting with a contractor or business owner where you're trying to get them out of the driver's seat, right? And you're trying to create a little bit of freedom in their lives? What's their biggest hang up typically that they're
all the things you guys have said? Like,
Yeah.
You're right there. I mean, it's the same. Like, this is what I know. I don't know what I would do with myself. I don't want to let my team down. Like, what are they going to think of me if I'm taking time off? Am I, what message am I sending? All this stuff. That's the biggest hurdle. And at the same time, I have less of those conversations with clients at Tap the Potential, more of them on podcasts. And the reason I have less of these conversations with clients is because by the time people show up at Tap the Potential, they get it. That I've got to take my life back from my business. And one of our clients, Andrew Tordzik, he owns Cedar Ridge Log Homes. One of his testimonials to me was, Dr. Sabrina, the money is great. Like, we're making a lot more money. We're a lot more profitable. But the main thing you guys have helped us with is that I have more time for what matters most. I'm able to be there with my kids. I take my kids to school. I go to their events. That's what's the most valuable outcome of all of this.
Yeah, I could see kind of the pushback that you can get just kind of digging into this initially, and it would be really, really hard to try and convince somebody that, like, you have to work less, where you have bills and you have things to, obviously the bills don't stop rolling in, and people's initial reaction is going to be, well, I'm going to step back and work less and make less money. But I think that the mindset should be, how can I work less and make the same amount or more money? Which I, but like with what we do, that's a really hard problem to solve with a small business or a construction company, which I'm sure that you're going to have your hands full with potential customers and clients for a very long time. Because I think even very successful construction companies, they run into these same issues. And I think that they're they're running the same way, and maybe the numbers are bigger, but I think at the end of the day, the issues are still prevalent within them.
Yes. I want to address what you just asked about. How do you take time off if you're struggling to pay your bills and, the money pressures are there? The majority of the clients who show up at Tap the Potential, when they show up on our doorstep, are in debt. They're laying awake at night worrying about how to cover payroll. And they're looking at investing in a year-long coaching program. And and what they're recognizing is, if I don't make this investment now, nothing changes. I don't want to be in the same place a year from now. And so
Yeah.
one of the things, and we haven't really even gotten into the Tap the Potential solution, which is the guaranteed path to designing your sustainably profitable business so you have more time
We're not
for
going to talk about
management.
the solution. We're just going to talk about all the issues that we
all
have.
the problems. But what the reason that I've created the solution is business owners need to know what comes first, second, third, and fourth, because you're trying to do everything all at once when you're trying to work on your business. And step one is to design your business to be sustainably profitable. So we get the profit in, right?
That's step one.
That's step one. And so
right,
that
I gotta rake something up here.
That means that every decision flows from that going forward. And you have to ask yourself, if I make this decision, is it going to help us be more profitable, or is it taking us away from profitability? And then we move into niching down with a clearly defined sweet spot. The number one reason we all work way too hard is because when we start our business, we think we have to take on whatever work comes our way to get money coming in the door. And we continue to run our business that way. So we end up with clients with all kinds of different needs. So like if you're a remodeler, you're doing kitchens, you're doing bathrooms, you're working on $1 million homes, you're working on a $150,000 home, and you're all over the place. And there's no consistency happening there, which makes it hard to put systems in place. It makes it hard to hire people. It makes it hard to train people. And so we identify what is the most profitable work for you to be doing and your best clients that you've had so far. And we use that to create the sweet spot in the business and start to design your marketing and your advertising. You're never saying, we won't take your $20,000 remodel. You're just putting pictures intentionally on your website that show the higher end work, the bigger kitchens and the nicer things. And when you're doing that, you're attracting more of what you want. And so you're able to grow the business from that sweet spot. It usually means scaling the business back. And what it does, a lot of business owners think, well, does that mean cutting my revenue? Yeah. And a lot of times you have more owners paying profit because you cut your revenue. Yeah. So you have more money all of a sudden. You also have more time because you're not scattered in all these different directions. And then the third step is to innovate so that you really stand out, and it gets you away from price competition in your marketplace because you have the time now to focus on your top clients and understand what they want and what they need and their unspoken wants and needs, and incorporate that into how you do business so that you have a reputation. You're the person to go to for this thing. You're the guy. And once you have the innovation in place and you have more business coming in, that's where you start to look at hiring. And you only hire when you have that sweet spot defined, because most of the time when we're hiring and we feel like in construction, it's always like we're short-staffed. We don't have enough people around here. We need to hire. A lot of times it's because there's not a clearly defined sweet spot. So you and your team are spread to the wind. When you get that sweet spot in place, you realize we don't need as many people as we thought we needed. So what's the biggest expense in the business? Payroll. So if you can decrease your payroll because you have a tighter sweet spot, you're immediately going to have more money in your bank account. So are you starting to see like, oh, this is how you pay for a 4-week vacation? Like, oh, wow, there's money here in the business. And the other point I want to make about this is when I teach how to hire the best. And one of the things I say is when you have an A player, and they're working on the sweet spot in the business and they're working from their strengths, they're going to be 900 to 1,200% more productive than a warm body. So that means you don't need as many team members. They don't have to work 60 hours a week or even 40 hours a week because they're A players. And you can shrink your payroll and you can pay more. But that's always the things like, how do we stay competitive with wages? You can pay more because you have a tighter sweet spot and you don't need as many team members.
Well, that's also at that point, right, where step 3 and then going into step 4, where it's like, all right, I know it's going to be hire the right people at this point. And that's when it really is critical, because now you've kind of created this market for yourself. You have a product that you need, a very specific product or service that you need to deliver and execute. And at that point, you really can't afford to hire somebody who's not going to deliver. So I think at that point, it is important and really critical to your business to find the right person and be able to pay them the right amount of money. Because if you've done all of this work and you've now created this business model and this market for yourself, and you're selling whatever that service is, if it's a premium level service, at that point the correct people need to be put in place, and you can't substitute that for people who are just looking to kind of skate by. And I could see, the trouble in that point where you put all of this work into place and then people going to hire, and now customers not being happy because they're not putting the right people on the job.
Yeah. So what you just described is natural accountability to have a higher standard in your hiring. Like you can't just hire somebody because you need a warm body to fill a role.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting to me is as we bring business owners in at Tap the Potential, one of the first things we do is we survey their key team members, their A players, and we ask those A players about their experience in the business. And time and time again, this happens mostly in construction companies, but I see it kind of generally across the board, but it's really prominent in construction. When we ask those A players, what do they most appreciate about the leader of the business and the business where they work, we hear respect. That's that simple. They want to be respected. And it is so unusual in the industry to work for a business owner that respects them, that it really stands out to them when they feel respected. So when you're thinking about, how do I differentiate myself as an employer of choice to attract those A players to my business, it goes back to have those core values, those immutable laws. Treat your people with respect. Show them work-life balance. Encourage them to have work-life balance. And it's the intangible perks of working for you that will attract those A players and help you stand out. There was a post on Facebook yesterday about Buc-ee's and their hiring, and their wages are way up here. And all the comments underneath it were about, have you ever worked at a convenience store? Do you know how hard that is? And those people are working their tails off for that money and blah, blah, blah. And so it doesn't take a lot to be different as an employer to attract those A players.
So having this conversation with you, and we've had other coaches on, and I feel like they're primarily coming from a business background. And I think that their approach to coaching is very different than yours. And you have a psychology background, correct? You have a doctorate in psychology, and it's almost as if the financial aspect and the business tangibles are not second rate, but it's a lot of your focus in this conversation is more on the psychology of running a business and treating your employees a certain way, and even the respect that you're talking about. And how common is it for coaches to have more of a psychology background than a business background per se?
There's a lot of life coaches who have a psychology background and not many in the business arena.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things. When I started out, I was going to be a life coach, and I really wasn't going to focus on business owners, but the majority of clients who showed up at my door were small business owners. And I was talking about work-life balance and time management. And I started looking at, just telling them, you need to take some time off, you need to rest. And what they would always come back with was, you don't understand, I can't, because things stop when I'm not here. And I realized what they really wanted from me was help with their leadership and their employee problems. And once I was able to solve that for them, they were able to take their life back from their business. And I cannot emphasize enough that it's not about the money. No matter how much we think we want to grow these businesses and have, some fancy trucks and a nice office space and make lots of revenue, and that somehow that makes us better human beings, at the end of the day, it's not about the money. We have business owners who come to us now in their 60s and they want to sell their business. I want to be done in 5 years. We hear that a lot. Just 5 more years and help me get this business in shape. Don't wait till you're 60 to start working on that. The longer runway you have, the better.
To something you said in the beginning of this podcast is like, you help people set up the business to be more profitable. And to kind of go off what Tyler just said, I would agree. We're taking way more of an approach on the psychological side, and as I'm saying this out loud, maybe I'm kind of answering my own question, but you know, when you talk about I help business owners become or build a more profitable business to be able to work less, in is the reality of everything we're talking about. When you say make the company more profitable, it is by improving oneself.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and for those that aren't watching this on YouTube right now, she smiled when when she said yes, because when you said that in the beginning, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna actually go a different direction than I thought." I thought we were gonna talk very much about, like, not working as much, and when you said, "Oh, I help businesses become more profitable," I was like, "Alright, I wonder what she puts in place. I wonder if she's got, like, a really good whip report or, you know, like a marketing chart or, and I'm sitting here, I'm like, "No, this has nothing to do with traditional business coaching. This
Yeah.
is, you know, getting yourself in shape and understanding that, you know, to summarize what I said a couple minutes ago is, you know, work when you work, you know, as much as you want, but when there's a time for a break, it's kind of like you have to listen to that and realize
Hmm.
you gotta hit the brakes for a minute and, you know, peel back and do something for yourself, and do it and, you know, do it proactively, not reactively."
Remember what I said earlier about what I didn't realize when I started my business is how much of a personal development and leadership development journey I was going to go on. This is about working on ourselves first and our mindset and asking better questions. So, like Tyler, you said, maybe the question we need to be asking is how do we get more profitable and work less? Yeah. The questions we ask determine the solutions we find. And so if we're not liking the solution that we're living, we need to be asking better questions of ourselves.
Do you have within your network, right? Say you bring a client on and you feel as though you've taken them to a certain point where you can do all you do with them. Do you have a network of like business style coaches that you kind of can hand them off to at that point?
Yes, we do. And, our sweet spot are the business owners that it's not really about the revenue. It's about how much you're working in the business and how much you want to have your life back. And so we have an ascension program, which is within Tap the Potential, where we start working on exit planning. And at the same time, there are some businesses that are so far off from exit planning, they just want to grow the revenue. And they're like, okay, we're going to add, we're going to go up to 20 million, 30 million. That's not us. At the point where you're bringing in a dedicated HR person, which is usually around 20 team members, that's where we're saying, okay, we're going to look at getting you into working with someone else who works with businesses of that size, because
Yeah.
there's different opportunities, there's different challenges. And so we know what we're good at and we know what lights us up, and that's where we want to stay in our lanes.
I also feel, and it's probably not a coincidence, that with a smaller business, the owners are very hands-on and they're in the day-to-day, and there's a lot of emotional and psychological involvement with a smaller business. And you get into businesses that are 20 plus, 100 plus, and the people who own those businesses aren't they're emotionally detached from them. It's more of a
Mhm.
business mindset. And I think that for what you do, you have far less value in that relationship, and in that experience for them than when you have a small business operation where that owner started it bootstrap from the ground up. It was their brainchild, and I think that it is very important at that point to kind of condition these people to understand psychologically what will make them have a successful business, be a successful husband, father. And I think that that is so important with these smaller businesses versus when you get into these larger companies where, the owners are slightly detached from that. They're not in the
Yeah.
day to day. They're not with all the employees and everyone. And I think that that just takes a different type of business and person to kind of shape them to where they need to be.
It's for me, I made a decision years ago not to go corporate. because change is slow in a corporate environment, in a larger company. The more people that are on the team, the slower change is going to be. I like smaller businesses because I can get in there with a business owner and we can create rapid change. We have a saying at Tap the Potential that small steps forward taken in a consistent direction lead to big change in a relatively short period of time. You just have to have that clear focus and you keep taking your action steps. And you can't do that in a corporate environment. There's so much, it's slow. And so a lot of what we teach on the leadership side is very much like people in corporate, they want that. I've been approached by people, would you please come and do this? And I'm just like, no, that's not where I want to be. I want to be focusing on these smaller businesses. But what I think is important to understand is that the leadership mentality that you need to learn as a small business owner is the same that any leader in a larger corporation needs to have. And it's that growing period.
I have a question that may be slightly off topic, but maybe you can handle it. Being that you're involved in this part of the business, and seeing owners with potential employees and finding the right hires, I always wonder, with the way that we educate in our country and the school system and college, do you feel that we're doing a good job kind of shaping and cultivating good employees? Like, I know that on one of the, maybe it's your LinkedIn, that you said that you were advocating for psychologically healthy workplaces. And I'm just curious if, the way that we're bringing our children up and the way that our school system is set up, that you feel that we're creating like the best type of employee that we could.
I love this question. It's such an important question. And no, I don't think our public school system is doing us a service in this country to create A player team members. And the reason is that A players think for themselves. They're creative, out of the box problem solvers. They're intrinsically motivated. They want to do a good job. They're not doing it for some bonus. It's just because it feels good to do a good job. You guys are A players. You get that satisfaction from a job well done. Our school system rewards people for being in the box, sitting in your seat, being a good little girl, little boy. Don't disrupt. Don't do anything or say anything that makes the teacher uncomfortable because you'll get in trouble. So what we get in the workplace is we get people who don't want to speak their mind. They're afraid to try to solve something on their own without asking you because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble. And we need, whether they're an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur is a team member who works in your company who's innovative and entrepreneurial. We need entrepreneurs. Small businesses are responsible for the majority of the payroll in the United States. We need entrepreneurial thinking. It doesn't have to just be business owners. And our schools, that there are private schools and people who homeschool, and when you're focusing on teamwork and teaching people how to collaborate and produce a project and allowing people to explore their interests as they learn is so important. So, the school system sets us up that we have to follow this path and we take these classes and we get this outcome. So there's no room really to develop your own interests. And we work best and we're going to be most creative and innovative and happiest when we're working from our strengths. And so, that opportunity to explore interests and take a project and say, you know what, I really like building something. And so I'm going to go over here and I'm going to build this thing and have that satisfaction from, I created this with my hands. I built this, look what I can do. That opportunity doesn't really exist very much in our public school systems.
Yeah. I guess where that question came from is I was reading a book or listening to a book, and it was kind of based on the correlation between exercise and brain function and creating younger, healthy human beings, and how exercise can help that so much. And one of the studies was that there was a PE teacher that was basically looked at a group of students that were running around a track, and at kind of first glance, he sees some girls who appear to be lagging and not really putting forth that much effort. And he's like, if I were to grade them, they would have gotten like a C rather than an A, because they were towards the end of the pack. They looked like they were dragging their feet. And when he put heart rate monitors on them, those girls had such a high elevated heart rate that essentially their effort was above and beyond the kids who were finishing first. And
Wow.
he basically, realized that the way that we're kind of grading our students is how they place on standardized testing, if they fit that mold that you're kind of speaking to, and not necessarily the effort for each individual. Where if you look at in this example, the effort that these girls who appeared as if they were dragging their feet was much higher than the effort of the girls who finished first. But if nobody's putting a heart rate monitor on there, they have no way of telling. And I look at the employee pool, and even going through college and having internships, and like, you get a better internship when you have better grades and you take different classes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be a good employee. And I think that what the indicators and what we are relying on to qualify people as good employees, are based on standardized education. And I don't like, maybe, that works 75% of the time, but I think that there's a lot of kids who are probably getting left behind or not given an opportunity to be really successful just because they don't fit that mold.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, one of the things I started thinking about as you were describing these girls and their heart rate is my experience was in high school, and I took chemistry and physics, and it's just because the teacher liked me and I was nice that I didn't fail. I mean, really,
Yeah.
it was hard. And I had to put so much extra time in and have tutoring, and the amount of improvement that I got, I went from an F to a C minus. Like, that's it. And when I got out of high school and I took my intro to psychology class, like, I read the book before the class started. I took it in summer school. So I got the book and I had read the whole book the week before class started. And I was just like, I was eating it up. And for me, the effort to do that was minimal because it was what I enjoyed. It's where my strengths are.
Yeah.
And so I think about those girls and their heart rate, like, they have other strengths. They're clearly dedicated and motivated individuals. They have other strengths than their physical abilities. And that's not, I'm curious, like, what do they love to do? What do they get excited about where it's not a lot of effort for them?
Yeah. And like, they're obviously hardworking and they're not being given an opportunity, or if they're just being graded at face value, they're lower on the spectrum there. Where, I think, like, what can we do as adults, as teachers, as educators, as business owners to help develop more qualified employees for the workplace?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
there's got to be something better than what we're doing in schooling right now, because it just seems as though it's whoever shows up and kind of fits that mold. And when it comes to what I do and probably what Nick does, that doesn't necessarily relate to the most successful employee.
I think what we have the opportunity to do as business owners is, when the refugees from the school system arrive on our doorsteps, that we really look at, what are your strengths? What are you good at? And where do you fit here for what we need? And how can we align a job that allows you to live and work from your strengths? Because that's where you're going to be happiest and most effective as a human being.
Yeah, and I know, Nick, we've had that conversation where it's like, you hire somebody to be a good carpenter and they're a fantastic carpenter, and then you promote them to be a project manager and they never wanted to be a project manager. Right. And then they're a terrible project manager.
Yes.
Right. And it's like, you thought that they were doing them a solid when that's not what they want to do.
Yeah, it's something that, it's we talk about this weekly in our operations meeting, and about career pathing. And like outlining the career path. And I was at an event. It was like a youth event for kids in the trades. And one of the other builders I was talking to, I was saying, it's weird. Like, we promote these people within the business. They go from carpenters to supers to project managers to, like, what, and then a higher up. It's like, but that's not a natural career path. That's a career path that we made up within our industry because that's how you make more money.
Yeah.
And the reality is, some guys just, I hate saying just want to be, because it's not lesser, but like some guys want to be carpenters for their whole life.
And they want to be
And
really good carpenters,
they want to be really
right?
good carpenters. And yes, there
Yeah.
is a pay, there's certainly a pay threshold to that, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the opportunity to make a great living. They might not make, $250,000 a year. Maybe they do. Maybe they're so good, they're so efficient, they're producing such high quality work that you can justify billing that, right? Like there's a point where someone's only going to pay so much.
So
But
there's other opportunities though for advancement, and we can get really creative with this.
And this was something I was going to mention in the beginning, is that we talk about the construction industry and how it is a good career path, and we've said this in the podcast before. But what is one of the issues that I see happening a lot is that we are over glorifying the construction industry, in the sense that you can make a lot of money, you can make six figures, you can, like, yeah, all of that is very true, very, very true, but it's hard work.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to do this, there are more things working against you in that case for being like making this your career. To
So
think
what you
that, like,
just
I'm gonna choose construction because I can make six figures a year. It's like you can also make six figures a year selling phone charges on Amazon
yeah. Yeah,
with a
what you
lot
just
less
described
backbreaking work.
is inoculation,
What
right?
does
So
that mean?
it means that when I was in undergrad in my intro to psych class during summer school at college, the professor said, "Who in here wants to be a psychologist? Raise your hand." I raised my hand. And he said, "Okay." And he went over to the board and he started writing names. He said, "I'm going to put your name on the board and I'm going to pray for you." I was like, whoa. Why? Then he started telling me, like, this is going to be hard. This is what you're going to have to do. And it's competitive to get into graduate school and blah, blah, blah. So I took that as a challenge. I was not an A student before that, but you know what? I was an A student after that because I like this stuff. I wanted to do it. And so you want to inoculate people coming into the industry. You want to tell them, like, here's what's wonderful. These are the things you're really going to enjoy. You know what? Here's what's really hard. So they can decide for themselves, do I want this? And then they can be all in, because I was all in from that point.
So what is, and you were kind of digging into this earlier, what is and what are potential career paths that you find with a lot of your clients that you can kind of explore for our industry?
So just taking the carpenter, for example, who just wants to be a good carpenter, you can have carpenter 1, 2, 3, and 4. And, maybe the 4 has something that he's really good at. And he's not great at supervising people. He's kind of brusque and, just kind of calls it the way he sees it. So putting him into a supervisory role, not so much. But he can teach. He can teach that thing that he's really good at. And he can mentor, not a lot of mentoring, but there may be like somebody who's coming up behind him. And this is how the trades developed over the years. Many years ago, you did apprenticeships and you learned from someone who was more experienced than you. Those opportunities. And it's really about just working individually with the team member and finding out what matters most to them. What's important to you, and owning when they don't want to be a leader, they don't have to be a leader.
Yeah, I don't think that we do a very good job, and we have the opportunity to approach business this way, being that we're so small, but I don't think that we do a good enough job of really exploring what each individual employee wants out of, what is this fly doing? Wants out of business, wants out of life, right? Where you get into a big company and that's probably just not an option. But if you have a half dozen people working for you, a dozen people working for you, you should be able to have enough of a relationship with their employees to understand what drives them, what they need, financially and emotionally.
Yeah.
Like that's one of the perks of having a small business.
When we onboard new team members at Tap the Potential, we spend very little time initially talking about what they're going to be doing at Tap the Potential. And we spend a lot more time getting to know them. They take the people map assessment with us. They take strengths finders. We want to know what they like to do for fun. What are their hobbies? We want to know what their financial goals are and with them so that we're working, putting them on a career path that helps them meet their budget and achieve the goals they want to have. We have team members who are here because they want to learn about business. And one day they're going to have their own business. And they're like, this is so cool. I get this education, front row seat of what not to do in business, because all the business owners come in and share their horror stories of what they've been through. And our team members who want to own their own business in the future, they're like, oh, wow, I get to see what to do and what not to do. And that's what they're getting out of this. And it helps me to know that, because I'm going to put them in front of those opportunities so that can be part of their training and their growth with us.
I was also reading that you have your own podcast, right? Profit by Design.
Yes.
What's the gist of that podcast? I mean, I dug into it a little bit, and I kind of loved the idea of it, where it's not so much, how much can you do for your business, but what your business can do for you. But if you want to elaborate on that some.
Yeah, it's, what has your business done for you lately, essentially? It ties to everything we've been talking about here today. So on the Profit by Design podcast, I talk about tips, tools, and strategies to design your business to be sustainably profitable so that you can have more time for what matters most and more money in your bank account than ever. And I like to bring on our clients at Tap the Potential who've been through our How to Hire the Best course. And one of the cool things that we do in our How to Hire the Best course is we teach business owners how to become an employer of choice so that they attract a steady stream of A players. And what that means is they have to do the work on themselves as the business owner, and they have to work on the culture of the business. And by the way, this is a 5-week course. So this is like rapid fire. We get in there and we do this. And when they complete 90% of their move forward action steps, we feature them in the Great Place to Work Spotlight, and they can use that in their recruiting collateral. So they have a logo that says as featured in Tap the Potential's Great Place to Work Spotlight. What I get out of it by bringing them on the podcast is these are real life small business owners. A lot of them are in construction or landscape. We have a lot of landscapers too. And they're talking about the simple things that they're doing in their business that any business owner can do on a daily basis that makes them an employer of choice and improves the culture of the business. So it takes something that feels so big and intangible and hard to do, and it just all of a sudden, when another business owner is sharing what they're doing, the listeners are saying, oh, that's all that you have to do. Really? I could do that. That's easy. And they realize the results they get from it. And so on the podcast, when I do a lot of teaching on the podcast, but I also, when I interview, I'm bringing in business owners and sharing their real experiences so that, I talk about this is real life business. This is not glammed up entrepreneurship on the Profit by Design podcast, because it's the reality. We always want to acknowledge the reality of what a business owner is experiencing every single day.
And are you guys putting out podcasts weekly?
Weekly. Every Thursday we drop an episode.
Nice. And who is your co-host?
There is no co-host. It's just me.
Okay. That's a lot of work on your plate.
Well, I want to acknowledge you guys, because you do these 2-hour-long episodes and you guys go so deep. And I think, wow, what a commitment you've made that you do this. So anybody who is listening to The Modern Craftsman, and if you're getting value, please leave these guys a review, because the reviews, the reviews mean everything. Because here's the deal. When you're really busy in your life and you're taking the time to listen to a podcast, you want to know that it's valuable, that it's worth your time. And when someone leaves a review on the Modern Craftsman podcast, they're saying, this is worth your time. It helps other people find you guys.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, it truly is. It's funny when earlier you said thinking about all the things that you have to get done in that certain amount of time, and do they directly relate to the profitability of your business? I'm like, does the podcast directly relate to the profitability of my business? And, I say that like very lightheartedly, in the sense that I love doing the podcast, and and Tyler and I, we constantly will share messages back and forth from people or read reviews of people that like, oh my God, this episode changed my life, or, or this was like, and that's really what it's about. Right. And, I like to think that, yes, the podcast in some way, shape, or form comes back around and dumps into that big profit bucket or mediocre sized profit bucket at the end of every year, in one way or the other. But when you say that we go 2 hours and we get really deep, I mean, this was, truthfully, just talking about what you do and how you coach and what your focus is from a profitable business, and directly relating it to some things that personally I struggle with. Really, I'll leave this podcast, and drive, my 45 minutes
You've
home.
already been doing it the whole podcast.
Oh,
Like
I'm
looking at Nick, and he's just like
I'm like
analyzing
I'm like
everything that he's doing.
I'm
I could
making
just see in the
notes.
back of his head.
I'm like making notes. I'm just like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I was actually, when we were talking, I was looking at my calendar. I'm like, all right, which days can I do school drop off this week? But like the reality is, it's like and I'm going home right now. I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna say, hey kids, like, do you want more stuff or do you want to see your dad more? And I know for a fact my daughters will say that they want to see me more. I'm pretty sure my son's gonna say he wants more stuff.
He wants trucks.
He's like, oh, boys.
What if he has dad to play with the trucks with him? Like, it
I
doesn't
know.
have to be either or.
And truthfully, it's, like I think that from a father standpoint, I fulfill that role. My assessment would be really well. As a husband, I think that's where I probably lack, if I were to self-assess. And and oftentimes, because marriages are tough, because having little kids is tough, having little, I've already announced it once, but we're having another child, and it's like, so that adds to the level of difficulty and stress. And then and all of that compounding, and then it's and then I'm like, I'm the provider, and you had said something earlier about that, and it's like, yeah, my job is to provide, and males in general tend to, I think you said, disregard friendships or something like that. It's like, man, like that, my life has changed drastically, where I joked about Tyler and I, like, having very small friends circles. Like, we don't have Friendsgiving. It's not like, that's just not part. That's not part of our schedule.
On the podcast.
It's like, it's very much, and I try to say it in this order: is it's myself, my family, my business. And and beyond that, there's very little.
Is you think, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I actually wanted to ask this earlier when Dr. Sabrina had mentioned this, where it's like, do you feel as though if you weren't so tired from, business and working and putting in the hours day to day, do you think that you'd have more energy to have more of a social life? Or, right now for me, like for me, I don't go out and socialize a ton, in the general sense of the term, because if I have time off, I want to relax or spend it with my family. And do you feel as though that's part of the reason? Like, if I didn't work as much, I'd be able to spend time with my family and have more energy to go and socialize.
If I didn't work so much, I would not add. I would just fill the family bucket more. I wouldn't add the social aspect of it. But I do. But I guess, when I say that, if I'm filling that family bucket more,
you already are.
Well, I would probably feel more comfortable
not spending time with them.
With socializing, meaning, like, rather than never going out, like, hey, a friend wants to get dinner once a month, like, that cadence would feel more comfortable and more okay in my own brain, where it's like, right now, if I'm always working and I'm rushing to get home at a particular time to make it, the best for my family, at that point, for me to then say, oh, I'm also going to socialize. For me, that doesn't sit well, where it's
Yeah.
like,
There's guilt there too.
yeah, for sure.
I believe that 90% of adults are experiencing role strain. And that's what you guys are
Role strain?
describing. Role strain, where we're in these multiple roles that compete with each other for time and for our attention. So, father, husband, business owner, football coach, all of those are different roles. And there's strain because we want to show up, players especially, we want to show up and we want to be our best in every single role. And when you have that pressure to be a provider, it's very easy to say, well, here's where I'm going to put most of my energy because I'm the provider. And one of the things I want to acknowledge around that is I get that pressure. I was a single mom for 5 years, and I had to provide through the business for my kids. And they needed me because we had gone through a divorce. It was a huge transition and they were struggling. So I had to be there with them. And so I felt that pressure constantly. And I had to make those decisions every day. Do I work longer because I know I can get another client if I stay 2 hours later tonight? Or do I shut it down and be there with my kids? And I made the choice whenever I could to be there with my kids as much as possible. And when we reduce the time that we spend in the business, it opens up the opportunity to put more time in other buckets, and it decreases that role strain that you guys are speaking to. And, when you don't have much time with your family to begin with, it's very hard to say, hey, I'm going to call my buddy up and go to dinner with him. You guys are on your own tonight. But if they're getting plenty of time from you and you feel like, this isn't a good place, it's much easier to say, yeah, I'm going to go call my friend and we're going to go do something.
Yeah.
I have a lot of strains, and I'm just going to add this to them. I have one more question for you. It seems as though with your kind of the style of coaching that you have, that people are coming to you once there's a problem that's already existent. And I'm sure that that's probably the case with a lot of people who go to a more standard business oriented coach. And I think of it, if you were to get a dog, you'd probably read some books on dogs first. If you're going to have kids, you're going to take some like parenting courses. And we start businesses without really having any sort of business training, whether it's, a typical business style training coach, a psychological business coach, a life coach, whatever that may be. What advice would you have for people, or how often do you get people coming to you where it's like, hey, I want to start a business and I want to get off on the right foot? Because to me, in hindsight, that makes way more sense than being 5-10 years in and then coming to you with a problem.
Yeah. One of the most fun clients we've worked with was in a situation where they'd had a failing business and they were starting something new, and they wanted us to help them do it right from the ground up. And we chose to work with them, but we don't do startups. And the reason we don't do startups is there's lots of reasons, but the main reason is no one can appreciate what we're teaching until they felt the pain.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to do this hard work to get your business where it needs to be.
I'm going to go to a divorce therapist. I'm going to go to a divorce therapist before I get divorced. The marriage counselor before I'm married, just to see what I need to do when I'm married.
Yeah. Well, it's a whole different set of issues with startups, and the people who work best with us recognize they're in their own way and they got to get out of their own way. And that's the people that we can have the greatest impact with.
Yeah. I think of it, as preventative, where, you look at a lot of people where, even if you think of alcoholics and kind of the community around that, and I think that there's obviously a disease there, and that's something that should be spoken about and taught to kids and families at a younger age, rather than when they've already established the habits and the lifestyle and the anxiety and everything else that's kind of led them down that road. where it's like, hey, there's probably an opportunity to help so many people with what you do beforehand, where it's just a life coach, somebody kind of approaching this from a different angle than what people are
Mhm.
normally thinking. And I think that, what you're doing and your approach to this could impact a lot of people. Um, and it would definitely be, maybe I'm just saying that because I've been through a lot of it, but I feel like it would be beneficial to kind of hear this and be able to relate to the experience that you have and your clients have before going through that.
Absolutely. And that's why I do the podcast. Because people who listen to that, we have a lot of people who are in earlier phases of the business aren't ready for what we do in our Better Business, Better Life program, simply because they don't have those stressors or challenges yet. But they're learning through the podcast of, I want to do this right from the start. It's the reason I wrote the books. I mean, everything that we teach at Tap the Potential is in those books. Well, not
Right.
everything, but most everything is in there. And when people come to us, they want accountability. They know that when they just say, I'm going to do this differently, nothing happens. They need
Yeah.
one to hold them accountable. And we're known for the accountability. They want to be in with other business owners, and we do cross industry. So our groups are small groups, and it's a hybrid of one-to-one coaching and small group coaching. And we put you in there with people in different industries because it gets you outside your box. It helps you think and be more innovative. And what is one of the biggest epiphanies is I'm not the only one. And every business owner at this stage of business has these challenges. And so it takes that pressure off, that self-doubt, that imposter syndrome that so many of us business owners carry around with us, that I don't want to let on that I'm having these struggles because I must be doing something wrong as the leader of
Yeah.
this company. And it's like, no, this is just normal. This is what it is like at this stage of the business. And by the way, here's how you get out of that. And it's real
Yeah.
simple. And, one of the things that I think a lot of business owners don't put enough attention to is strategy, and understanding that when you use the right strategy, it's like the little arrow that solves 10 problems.
Mhm.
And it's like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to have to tackle each one of these problems individually in my business. But if you put the right strategy in place with the Tap the Potential solution, like, this list of problems goes away.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear that as well regarding the podcast, because I feel as though that was kind of the catalyst and the impetus for us creating the podcast, was to be able to let people know that they weren't alone. And
Yeah.
that there's a lot of mutual struggles, and successes and problems and issues that we have. And it was like, hey, if we can help people and they realize that they're not alone, and there's a lot of other people who are going through this or looking for help or have gone through the same thing and have a way to get out of that where it's not going to put you under. That was the reason why we started the whole podcast. And it's nice to hear that you're doing the same with your podcast, where it's kind of part commiserating, part educating, and just uniting everyone on one front.
Yeah. And, I want to speak to something that Nick, I think, is grappling with in his head, is like, does this contribute to the profitability of my business?
Oh, I'm not. I'm going to bed tonight, and I'm just gonna be like, all right, let's figure this out.
One of the reasons I did start the podcast with a co-host, my co-host was Mike Bruno at the time. And one of the greatest, what we got out of the podcast is our own learning and development. Like, I have grown so much because I've interviewed people and I've learned through all those interviews. And now that I do more teaching on the podcast, it forces me to articulate my thinking and my ideas. So for me, the podcast is, it's a labor of love, definitely, to produce a podcast, but I grow so much out of it. It's so worthwhile to me.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I've been pretty upfront about that in conversation, is that one, selfishly, I do this. I do this podcast also very selfishly, where,
Mhm.
yes, I appreciate that we can help people and we get feedback and we help change the course of how people approach their business, their life, commiserate with us, whatever it is. But, selfishly, I'm sitting here asking, you questions for me.
Yeah.
And, and I ask other builders how they deal with something for me. And I
Yeah.
want particular guests on the podcast because I aspire to be similar to them, or I like how they're operating their business, or whatever it is for me. And it's obviously beneficial for myself as well as everyone that gets to listen. But yeah, there's so much self-learning that goes on in these conversations. And I mean, I joke when I go home and I'm gonna sleep and think about redoing everything, but the reality is it's like, no, I'll drive home and I'll think about a few things that maybe I've been struggling with, and realize that, what, I didn't actually have to change it. I just had to turn that dial down a little bit and turn this one up.
Right.
and
And that's the
and
strategy side.
yeah, and that's it's the constant reminder of that, where, and something I said about the software in construction right now is like, these guys are trying to come in and completely change the way we do things. I met with a company yesterday. They're like, "Hey, we want to get some feedback. We'll pay you for your time." I'm like, "Sure, go ahead." And then they deliver it. It's like, you guys are trying to get rid of something that is so ingrained in the way we do our process, instead of
Mm.
playing off that.
Yeah.
And
Or
it's like,
integrating it.
or right. And you know what? I'll give you the example specifically. It was like they were talking about, like, hey, this is a communication tool that it will get rid of email and text message for construction. I'm like, stop. I'm like, I loved everything that you guys were saying up to this point. Go to your iPhone, go to your usage, and tell me what are the top two things that you use. It's text message and email. So for you to tell me that magically that this software is going to replace my client from texting my super saying, "Hey, did the brick arrive on site?" or "Hey, did you get that sample?" Like, it's just not going to happen. I know at the core of what we're talking about, we need to document things officially, but you are trying to eliminate the use of email and text by forcing something else in place of that, when it's not going to happen.
Mm.
And I don't know why I just went on that tangent, but point being is, like, it's not it's not, "Hey, Nick, you need to go back and reassess how you're doing this." It's, "Hey, tweak this, tweak that,
Yeah.
and try that. See what that does. Does it start trending in a better direction, or are you continuing to veer off the road?"
Yeah, and I think that's such an important point, because when we're doing something that goes against our human nature or the way we've always done something, we're not going to follow through with it. But when we can take what we're already doing and tweak it and make it work better, then the change process is easier. We're going to be more motivated to change. And one of the things when I founded Tap the Potential, and I was a brand new coach, and I was trying to remember all the things I was supposed to ask as a coach, is I realized very early on that if I just a client showed up and I said, "What's on your mind today?" or "What do you want to focus on?" we went right into their list of problems, and the conversation and the session went down very quickly from there. The energy and the idea generation. So I shifted that, and I just started asking about, what are your wins and successes? And that has been the best thing, one of the best things I could have ever done for the business, because number one, it allowed me to learn what works in business. Like I was just a student taking all these
Yeah.
wins and successes in, and that's part of how I built the Tap the Potential solution. But the other thing is that, why not just do more of what works in your business? Like, yeah, that's a no-brainer.
Mhm.
Who are your best clients? How do you attract more of them? What did you do to get the one that you just got? How can you do more of that? And when we do more of what's already working, it's easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're looking to tap into somebody's potential, you also have to play to their strengths and
Yep.
kind of what they enjoy. Um, I think it's tough to really pull everything you can out of somebody when you're just militant all the time, and you kind of have to play those cards correctly. Another, I guess, a quick question: is this 2 hours count towards your 25?
Yes.
It does.
Yeah.
So you
Wow.
had 23-hour work week. Good for you. Even more
This is
impressive.
when I look at my time, I always think about the $10,000 an hour value. What has the greatest value? You guys are allowing me to reach people that may never have heard or would never have encountered me otherwise, and I can share this message. And my greatest hope in the world is that there's more business owners out there saying, you know what, I'm going to work 35 hours this week instead of 40. And every time a business owner does that, you're role modeling it for somebody else and inspiring them. And it's just a discussion that creates possibilities for people. And I appreciate that. And to me, that's a high value use of my time.
Yeah, well, we appreciate your time. And kind of on that note, as we wrap things up, we spoke to your podcast, but, you know, if you want to just give us a rundown of books and where people can find you and businesses, and I know that you write a ton of articles and everything else. So here's your chance.
Thank you. So our website is tapthepotential.com. And really, if I've said something today that's caught your attention and you think I'm ready to take my life back, go to the website, book a call, and talk with one of our members of our success team.
Cool.
We have a resources page. That's where you need to go. So it's tapthepotential.com/resources. There's links to the podcast there. There's the link to my PDF on how to make your time worth $10,000 an hour and the chart of $10,000 an hour activities. I have a guide to talking to your employees about profit that's on there. We have a strategic planning series that's coming out at the end of the year. All of that will be on the resources page. So just tapthepotential.com/resources.
Amazing.
We appreciate 2 of your 25 hours. That's very generous. Very generous of you. I definitely would have just tacked that right onto the top and like, it's a 27-hour week.
Well, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate this opportunity. It really is an honor to be here and have the opportunity to share with your audience.
Yes, Dr. Sabrina, you're great. Before we let you go, we'd love to get you to record an intro.
Yay.
So there's no script. You can introduce yourself, let everyone know that you're joining the Modern Craftsman this week, and feel free to ad lib from there.
Okay.
So
just tell me when.
Action.
Hey there, this is Dr. Sabrina Starling. I am joining Tyler and Nick on the Modern Craftsman podcast this week, and we're going to talk all about taking your life back from your business and how to do it in a way that you're more profitable. Like, how cool is that you could work less and have more money that you actually get to keep? So as we get into the episode, start thinking about, if you could have more time for what matters most, where would you be spending that time?
I think that was our best one so far.
Yeah. Dude.
Professional. You've done this before.
I'm a podcast host, guys.
Professional.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. This was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate this opportunity. And Nick, I know that you were looking at coming to the retreat. Adam was really working hard, and your little one is due right around that time. Yes. So
I know we were going back and forth. He's like, I'm getting it all set up. I'm like, hey, what's the date? And he told me the date. I'm like, I can't do that. And he's like, why? And I'm like, and I told him, he goes, oh, okay, yeah. And I have, I actually had another meeting, I think the week before that. I'm like, my agreement in that group is I cannot miss a meeting. So I was like, hey, I have to miss this one. And they're like, you need a good excuse. And I told them, they're like, that's in the list of good excuses. So you're good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe the following year.
Yeah. So well, either way, I'll check out the website and dig into it.
Yeah. Yeah. I loved getting to talk with you guys. You asked great questions. And when you're a podcast host and you ask those questions from your own curiosity, that makes the best interview, because your listeners are having those same questions. Totally. So let me know anything that I can do to help you guys. Just, you have my email. I'm on social.
Sure.
We're connected. I know you guys are big on Instagram, at least Nick, you are. So anything I can do to support you, just know. And we will definitely, when you drop the episode, we'll get it out in all of our social.
I appreciate it. That's one of the things we didn't touch on, but it's like doing the podcast, right? There is a lot of self-reflection and growth there, but it's also expanding your network where, I run into a problem now, and like, I don't feel out of line reaching out to you and being like, hey, can you give me a hand real quick question? Yes. So it's definitely helpful, but that goes right back to you too. If there's anything we can do, just let us know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you guys have been awesome.
Keep swimming.
Thank you so much. Yeah. I am. I'm going to get better. All right. See you later.
Very good. See you.
Thanks.
Bye.
think you could just hit that leave. Oh, she got it. Great. How did she do it? Last time it either way. We're still live on YouTube. This is so cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Doug was texting me because I was having audio issues earlier. He's like, "You sound great on there." I
Yeah.
just had to turn up my volume. You guys just sounded loud. It's better now though. I think maybe my hearing's something's up with my hearing.
Oh,
Maybe that's the problem.
yeah. Well, this podcast is brought to you by Rockwool. If you guys haven't joined the R class program, make sure you do. It's funny, I keep seeing everyone on Instagram be tagged under the R class, and a few of the guys rocking the flannels. It's getting cool in Boston. I might have to pull my flannel out. It is a nice red and black flannel. But we are into the WRB and finally getting to weather tight on our Needham project. And Rockwell is going to be coming back out. They've helped a lot of the detailing on that project, and we have some funky ventilation details in that roof line. If you guys haven't seen it on our Instagram at NS Builders, but that roof has swooping curves in every direction. So ventilating that roof is going to be pretty tricky. And I was actually on site with Mike the other day, and it's cool how he's plan for that ventilation, but he still got a couple concerns. And the best part about being part of the R class is that Rockwell will come out, work with us, make sure that we hit those details. And I've said it before, but if their product doesn't work for the situation at hand, they're going to come to the table and explain like why it doesn't work and offer up a solution that, still achieves the goals that we're looking for.
Yeah, that's really important. I think to be able to kind of hand that over and know your boundaries and your roles and your strengths, and when you can't hit the mark, pass it off is very important. Good life lesson.
Life lesson. Cool. I don't know why.
All right.
I don't know why.
All right.
I don't know why I added the life lesson, but yeah. So for everyone on YouTube, thanks for tuning into this live session. We're gonna keep doing this and get a couple of them behind us. And then, yeah, so you got a little sneak peek into how we do this when we record the intro, which is at the end, and so on and so forth.
So I didn't catch up on the Slack conversation from today because I had a very busy day.
Yes.
So,
but
I believe that this was discussed in that conversation, the YouTube.
Oh, I also haven't caught up on that.
Oh, because I was like halfway through this, I see a text from Nick that's like, "We're live on YouTube, so you know." And I was like, "I didn't know, but thanks."
Yeah, well,
I was
just
unaware.
I know at the end sometimes we banter.
Yeah,
So I was like, "Hey, just FYI,
yeah,
we are live."
but
And
I was
three
unaware
people.
that we were live.
There's 3 people watching right now. So one of them is Doug. We know that.
Yeah,
And I don't know who the other 2 are, but either way, it's cool that we were able to successfully pull that off and record. So here we come.
sweet. Thank you.
See you guys.